Yo, what is going on, everybody? Thank you for clicking on this video today. We're going to be starting off the Week 11 fantasy football rankings. As the title indicates, we're going to be going through the top 30 wide receivers. So first off, we need to mention everybody that's on bye week. We're going to have the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, the Seahawks, and the Jaguars. We also had some injuries last week. Cooper Kupp got put on IR. Jerry Jeudy also got hurt, so they're not going to be here this week. Also, Allen Lazard and Christian Watson, both are on the injury report, but probably just because they're playing on Thursday Night Football, but definitely want to monitor that as it gets closer. But we're going to talk about both these guys here. But with that out of the way, let's get into the rankings. So we're going to be starting it off with Justin Jefferson. I mean, not much to say here, not much to say about all these top guys. Everyone in the first tier is going to be pretty much top 5 every single week. And JJ is going up against Dallas this week. They've actually been pretty easy against the wide receivers over the past 4 weeks. Regardless, I'm not ever too worried about its matchup, but going to be a smash play every week. After him, we're going to have Stephon Diggs, who a little bit worried about last week just because we didn't know if Josh Allen was going to be playing. Still would be a top play even if Josh Allen didn't play. Luckily, he did. Diggs didn't find the end zone, but still put up a great fantasy day for everybody. 12 receptions on 16 targets and went for 128 yards. I mean, going to be fantastic in pretty much any format. Then after him, we're going to have DeAndre Hopkins going up against San Francisco. Another matchup that sounds tough, but it's actually been giving up a lot of points to wide receivers. Had a little bit of a down week, but still going to be okay for fantasy last week. Regardless, though, he's going to be a pretty much top 5 option every week. After him, we're going to have Devontae Adams, who's been fantastic the past 2 weeks after having a terrible week a couple weeks ago. I only have him here, my wide receiver 4, and behind Hopkins because he's going up against Denver and going to be probably shadowed by Patrick Surtain, who's probably the best cornerback in the league at this point. Now, that doesn't really matter for Devontae Adams, but just going to make me lower him a little bit, whereas like lowering him is at the wide receiver 4. So regardless, you're going to be putting him in. And the last guy that's going to be in the top 5 for me is going to be CeeDee Lamb, who actually had the best fantasy day of his career last week. Was a wide receiver 1 on the week and absolutely balled out. Found the end zone twice. 11 receptions on 15 targets for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, fantastic to see him really kind of be that alpha that we've always thought he could be. Hopefully this continues now that they're past their bye week and the offense has had some time to really be together. I got him here at my wide receiver 5 this week. Now moving on to my wide receiver 6, I'm going to have T. Higgins, still no Jamar Chase, so going to be a great play still every single week. The Pittsburgh Steelers secondary has been absolutely terrible this year, so should be able to dominate it. They're also coming off a bye week, so pretty much everyone besides Jamar should be healthy, and they've had some time to figure some things out and game plan for the Steelers, who are also a divisional opponent. Now they do have TJ Watt back, so we definitely got to see how that affects the defense. They did look a lot better last week with him, but regardless, I think T. Higgins is going to be a smash play with Jamar Chase out of the lineup. Then after him, I'm going to have AJ Brown, my wide receiver 7. I'm not sure if people are too worried about him just because he had a really bad week last week. That's kind of the case with wide receivers. They're going to be inconsistent. Now, one catch is really tough to see and can really hurt your fantasy day, but that's what holds AJ Brown from being in that tier 1 most weeks, is that he has that downside. He's always been a boomer bust player, and now he's on an offense that likes to run the ball a lot and it's not super high passing volume, but obviously we've seen his upside. Had 3 touchdowns in 1/2 a couple weeks ago, so he can give you that any single week and has been pretty consistent most of the year. But this is just going to happen with every wide receiver. Everyone has down weeks. Even Justin Jefferson and Diggs have down weeks. It happens to everyone, so don't be too worried about him. If you can go buy low, I think fantastic candidate right now to buy low on. And the last guy that I'm going to have in this tier is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, going up against the New York Giants. Relatively tough matchup, but also not the toughest. He finally had a good game again last week. He had 10 receptions on 11 targets for almost 120 yards. No touchdowns, but I'm sure that's going to come. Still, though, that many receptions and that many yards going to be great for fantasy regardless. Now, this is a tougher matchup with the New York Giants, but he's one of the main weapons in this entire offense. So I think that he's going to be pretty relied on. So I think that he's going to be a great play every single week, probably this lower end of the top 10 every single week, just because of the offense and everything. I don't think he can crack into that tier 1 like we might have thought in the beginning of the year, but regardless, I think he's still going to be a great play and a great option every week. Now on to my wide receiver 9, somebody who's definitely a lot higher than he has been, really been showing out the past couple of weeks, and also with everybody on bye kind of pushes a lot of people up, but I'm going to have Terry McLaurin in my wide receiver 9. Over the past month, he's actually been the wide receiver 8, so he's been basically producing at this level with Taylor Heineke. And they're playing Houston, which is a really tough matchup on paper for wide receivers. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're one of the worst rush defenses, so pretty much they attack them through there. But this game only has a 3-point spread, could be kind of close, which makes them have to throw the ball more. Regardless, he's their go-to option. And even though Derek Stingley is very good, I don't think he can guard someone like Terry McLaurin right yet, so still going to be a good play, and I'd probably be playing him if I had him. Now, another person that is going to be a lot higher than he normally is because of injury and also the bye weeks is going to be Courtland Sutton. I got him here in my wide receiver 10. Now, first off, they're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, so absolutely smash matchup. Also, Jerry Jeudy got hurt, and that's very significant. All the weeks that we've seen Courtland Sutton really dominate and be great for fantasy has been without Jerry Jeudy, and we even started to see it last week. Once he went out, he had a lot better day than we've seen over the past 3 to 4 weeks. There's also like 8 people out that would be ahead of him or right around him. I'm not really sure how much of a hot take that is of these two guys being in the top 10 this this week or around there. Let me know what you guys think about it, but I have them here ranked in my wide receiver 9 and 10. And after them, in my wide receiver 11, somebody who's been kind of struggling lately is going to be Deebo Samuel. Now, this game the other week was the first game he came off of injury and the first game where he's really been a part of all the weapons, so could be getting more integrated into the offense. Also could be kind of just what it's going to be like or step back since there's so many mouths to feed. Hard to really know. I think the real truth is it just falls somewhere in the middle. He's still going to be a very high upside player just given his talent, but he might not be very consistent as we've kind of seen this year. But I think given his upside, he's probably going to be a wide receiver 2 every single week. But I definitely don't think he's going to be who most people drafted him to be. And then after Deebo, another person who's kind of been struggling, going to be Chris Olave. With Michael Thomas out, we could have thought it was going to be a bump for him just given that he's going to have that guaranteed volume, but hasn't quite turned into the production that we hope. But he's still on the field getting a good amount of targets. Only had 5 last week, which is lower than we've seen the previous weeks. But if that's going to be his absolute floor, then I'm probably okay with that, especially with a great talent like Olave. Now, they're still playing Andy Dalton, even though they say Jameis Winston is healthy, which I find kind of weird. I hope personally that they put Jameis back in. I think it's going to be a better opportunity for Olave to have more of the deep targets and longer touchdowns and really utilize a lot of the skill set that he does have that isn't quite being utilized to its fullest right now. We will see, though. I can't predict that's going to happen because we haven't heard anything, but maybe it will. Who knows? And the last guy that I'm going to have in this tier, my wide receiver 13, is going to be Brandon Ayuk. He's gone for over 80 receiving yards the past 4 weeks, which is great to see, especially in this offense. It's kind of the similar thing we talked about. Deebo could see a little bit of regression just given that there's so many mouths to feed, but also could be good since the offense should be a lot better. But they really like to run the ball, which kind of takes away from some of the passing volume that they could be getting. But it almost seems like Brandon Ayuk is the actual wide receiver 1 here in terms of receiving. So it's definitely a situation to monitor between Deebo and Ayuk and who is more fantasy relevant going forward. Although I think that they're both going to be good options with high upside and a little bit lower floors. Deebo probably has a little bit higher upside, but a little bit lower floor, just given how he's utilized. But Ayuk is probably going to be a pretty consistent option with obvious upside that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. Now, moving on to my tier 4, I'm going to have Gabe Davis going up against the Cleveland Browns. He's definitely a boomer bust type player, somebody that you kind of put in your lineup just hoping that he'll hit because he's in a great offense and is a really great talent. But you're going to get a lot of those floor weeks with him. So if you're putting him in your lineup, you kind of just have to expect that. Last week, though, we actually saw the most targets that he's seen on the entire year, which is really great to see. Hopefully that can continue, but since we haven't seen it, I can't really predict it going forward, but definitely encouraging. Up next, my wide receiver 15 on the other side of the ball, I'm going to have Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is kind of another player who's been relatively boomer bust. He actually has one of the craziest splits of home versus road. I don't have the exact numbers, but on the road, he's averaging like 2 receptions for like 16 or 26 yards or something like that. Now, unfortunately, they're on the road again in Buffalo, but he's just somebody, I'm not actually going to base my analysis off that stat, but it was just a really weird trend to see. But one of those things, if you don't know about it, correlation doesn't equal causation, but don't need to get into that. Anyways, I'm not basing my fantasy analysis off that, but very interesting to see. So they are going to be in Buffalo this week. It's going to look like a snowstorm, but he's somebody who's just too talented and too integral to this offense that I think you got to kind of play him around here, but he's in the same tier with Gabe Davis where you could get a really low week any single week, but you can also get those boom games. And after them, another person I'm going to have here, my wide receiver 16 is going to be Allen Lazard. Now, he had a really down week last week. They only threw the ball like 20 times. Aaron Rodgers completed like 14 passes. Ended up going for 3 touchdowns, but all went to Christian Watson. He had his massive breakout game. That was the first time we've seen him really do anything relevant the entire year or in his entire career since he's a rookie. So I'm not predicting he's a wide receiver 1 or anything going forward, but definitely something we need to take notice of and pay attention to. But Allen Lazard has been very consistent besides last week. So let's be on the lookout for the Packers wide receiver splits as this week goes on. And after him, my wide receiver 17, I'm going to have Tyler Boyd. Obviously up here since Jamar Chase is out. He's been pretty good over the past like month or so. They're coming off a bye week, so hopefully get some more plays that he's a part of. I mean, they're going to need him because they don't have Jamar Chase, obviously, and going up against Pittsburgh, one of the easiest secondaries to go against. So if you've been holding on to him, we're able to pick him up off the waiver wire a couple weeks ago. Got a pretty good play this week. And on to my next tier, my wide receiver 18, we're going to have Devonta Smith. We had a really good game last week, which is great to see. Had a really weird kind of situation with his over receiving yards. Where on the last play, they were doing those pitches and he lost like 10 receiving yards, which made him hit his under, which is really lame to see, but that's just betting for you. He's one of those players though, like kind of with AJ Brown I talked about, just boomer bust since he's part of this offense that likes to run the ball a lot and there's not a ton of passing volume to go around, but it is an elite offense and these guys are both great talents. So it's a good chance they're in your lineup every single week since they have that great upside, but there's definitely going to be some inconsistencies with both of them. Then moving on to my next tier, my wide receiver 19, we're going to have Jacoby Myers going up against the New York Jets. He could be a little bit higher, but honestly, Sauce Gardner at this point is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. I mean, this kid's unbelievable. So he'll probably be matchup on Jacoby, at least for a good portion of it. So definitely going to lower some of his upside that he has, but he's been a good wide receiver throughout most of the year. So given his talent and how much he's been utilized, I still think he's going to be a solid option, but I've lowered him a little bit from where I originally had him given that matchup. And the last guy I'm going to have in this tier, my wide receiver 20, is going to be DJ Moore. Now, the very last game that he played in was that massive rain game on Thursday night, so hard to really take a lot from that, but he's definitely been better since the firing of Matt Rule. He's also partially been better with PJ Walker, so we'll see if it's due to the coaching staff or the quarterback, because Baker Mayfield is starting this week, so it definitely worries me a lot. And they're playing Baltimore, which has definitely been a lot better over the second part of the season than it has been in the beginning, so I'm worried about him a bit. I could even move him lower, but I got him right here right now, my wide receiver 20. If you have questions on him later in the week of guys lower than him, let me know, because I might be adjusting it as the week goes on. Another guy I'm going to have my wide receiver 21 in the next tier is going to be Rondale Moore, who's kind of been having a low-key breakout year this year, and I was worried since that Kyler Murray wasn't starting last week, but he was still really good for fantasy. Had 9 receptions on 13 targets for 94 yards, which is pretty good in most formats, especially for where you've gotten him or you're probably flexing him, so pretty good pickup and been a really solid flex play so far. Now, Colt McCoy, their backup, did get hurt in the game, so we need to monitor the situation. If Kyler and Colt both don't play, then I'm definitely going to have to move him down a lot, but if either of them are playing, I think he's going to be ranked right here. And the next guy that I got is going to be Michael Pittman. Now, he was a little bit better last week than he has been now that Matt Ryan is starting again, which is definitely encouraging to see. Harris Campbell is definitely someone we want to take notice of because he's been really good over the past month or so. And going up against Philly, pretty tough defense, but we've seen some people like Terry McLaurin kind of dominate them recently, so hopefully there's some upside there, and they're definitely going to be throwing the ball because Philly will put up points on them. So Pittman's outlook is looking a little bit better than it was last week now that Matt Ryan's back in. Hopefully he stays in. Another person who's been pretty disappointing all year, I'm going to have my wide receiver 23 is going to be Deontay Johnson. Going up against Cincinnati, pretty tough matchup. He's still just getting a really insane target volume, and there has to be positive touchdown regression coming. It's really hard to kind of bank on that, but with just how many targets that he's getting, it's going to have to eventually come. And Cincinnati is going to be putting up a lot of points on them, so they're going to have to be throwing the ball a lot. And Deontay is definitely going to be a benefactor of it. And then in my wide receiver 24, I'm going to have Joshua Palmer, who was pretty disappointing last week. This is obviously contingent on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams not playing. They both might be practicing this week, but I can't really say anything until we get more information. So if something does come out from that, I'll put it in the description down below, so stay tuned for that. But right now I got him here at my wide receiver 24, and going up against Kansas City, should have to throw the ball a lot in Sunday Night Football, but really struggled last week, but hopefully he can turn around now. And then my wide receiver 25, I'm going to have Garrett Wilson coming off a bye week. He was pretty good the past couple of weeks, so that's really encouraging to see him with his talent. It's awesome. But they're playing New England, which is a really tough matchup for wide receivers, so I have him lowered some, but I think just given his talent and how crucial he is to this offense, he is going to be a solid, low-end wide receiver 2 flex option for everybody. And the last guy in this tier, my wide receiver 26, is going to be Darnell Mooney. He's been okay the past couple of weeks, but definitely kind of the clear wide receiver 1 here. Cole Kmet also may be hurt, which would give them more volume, but Justin Fields has really turned it around the past couple of weeks and become one of the best fantasy options in the entire NFL. But that is mostly due to his rushing, not due to his passing. But when he does pass the ball, Mooney is one of those main targets, and he's honestly super talented. And going up against Atlanta, it's one of the best matchups for wide receivers, so should have a good opportunity for him to have a great game. And then moving on to my wide receiver 27, this is where I'm going to have Allen Robinson. I've been very unsure of where to put him, obviously with Cooper Kupp out. I do imagine that Stafford will be back this week, and we haven't really seen this team without Kupp in a couple of years, so it's really hard to know. Van Jefferson is healthy. I do imagine Ben Skoranek is going to be involved. Tyler Higbee will be involved, but I don't know who's going to be the main beneficiary. They paid Allen Robinson, and although that hasn't meant anything this year so far, I do think that they're going to try to force feed him some targets to get him going. So I got him here, my wide receiver 27, but if you want to put him lower, I totally understand it. It's going to be really tough to gauge how it's going on. Going up against New Orleans, they've actually been a pretty tough matchup for wide receivers over the past 4 weeks. So I do have some worries here, but I think just given this offense, and they going to need to throw the ball to somebody. And he's also one of their main red zone options, even when Cooper Kupp was there. So should be just more volume for him. So always going to have a really good option to score a touchdown. But this might be somebody I just put in my lineup and not watch the game. And after him, we're going to have Curtis Samuel. He's been lowered a little bit as well with Jahan Dotson back, even though Jahan didn't really do much last week. Still just going to be taking away opportunity from Curtis. And this offense is pretty tough to support multiple wide receivers, but they're using him all over. They have been all year in receiving and rushing. So there's going to be value with him every single single week. And they're playing the Houston Texans, which is a really, really bad defense, even if they're really good on paper against wide receivers. We talked about it pretty much every single week. It's mostly because they give so much up to the running backs that the receivers don't need to do much. But you could definitely do a lot worse than Curtis Samuel every week. And then after him, I'm going to have Adam Thielen. Going up against Dallas, they've actually been a lot easier, like I talked about Justin Jefferson, been a lot easier over the past couple weeks against wide receivers. And they should also be putting up points, so the Vikings will also need to throw the ball to keep up. And if you go back and look, Thielen actually hasn't seen less than 7 targets since week 1. So pretty consistent. I mean, hasn't produced for fantasy every single week, but in a pretty good offense, getting that many targets, somebody that's going to have to be in consideration every single week. So I got him here, my wide receiver 29. And my wide receiver 30, I'm going to have Christian Watson, the hot waiver wire pickup, the young stud who scored 3 touchdowns last week. Pretty crazy to see. Obviously, his talent has really kind of started to show, and he's going to have more opportunity going forward and probably have a lot more confidence. Now, until we see it a little bit more consistently, it's going to be hard to rank him any higher, but there's obviously great upside there. I mean, there's not many people who can score 3 touchdowns in the NFL, and especially on that first touchdown that he caught where he beat somebody on a go route and completely tracked the ball. I mean, that was fantastic to see him do because that's what they drafted him for. So now we're starting to see it. Hopefully he gets more integrated into the offense and this can go up. But until then, I'm going to have to keep him around here, but I'm honestly feel like he's just going to keep going up as the year goes on. I'm going to mention a couple other guys, even though this is 30. I got Kadarius Toney at wide receiver 31, and then I got George Pickens at wide receiver 32. There's a couple other guys that are also in consideration right outside. People like Devin Duvernay, Brandon Cooks. Those are the 2 main guys. We could also consider Drake London, and we saw a good week last week, but I would still wait till we see a little bit more consistency with that. Yeah, here are my top 30, I guess 32 receivers for this week. Got any questions, let me know. My running back videos should be coming out right after this, and then quarterback and tight ends after that. Make sure to drop a like on this video, comment if you got any questions. Like I said, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for those next ranking videos. See y'all there. Later.